Welcome back, Florida Politics Now. Welcome to the sauna that is Florida this week. We also have some hot stories for you to go along with that weather. You know, there's been a lot of people who have already cast their ballot in the GOP primary and the Democratic primary, but one of those candidates might not even be eligible in the first place, and they might have to do something with all those ballots that are already cast. Let's go ahead and take a look. Exchange before the judge even took the bench. Then came the real evidence. Fishback admits to voting in D.C. once, but said he never gave up his Florida residence.
It was locked down in D.C. I could not get down to Florida to vote in time. I showed up to a polling precinct with my Florida ID, and I asked the worker there, "Hey, I'm from Florida. I want to vote for Trump. Can I vote here?" And she looked me in the eye and said yes. She pulled out a tablet, had me sign something. I walked in, I pushed the button for Trump, I walked out and never thought about it again.
The Jay Collins campaign disagrees. They paid an expert some $50,000 to do research for them, including to look into Fishback's domicile, or in simpler terms, where he actually called home.
Basically call out a certain aspect of that shall not be false in Section 8?
This specifically concerning the borrower's occupancy of the property as the borrower's principal residence.
Fishback says he was stuck in Washington, D.C. in 2020 because of the pandemic and simply couldn't go back to his grandmother's house because of her health. He took issue with the question, insinuating that even Disney World was open at the time. He says Florida has always been home.
Here's my Florida ID, and she just, I guess very quickly, I signed it, I went in there, I voted, I was out in about 5-10 minutes.
The judge has been clear that he understands time is of the essence in this case. And I'll just tell you an update from that story. The judge does plan to rule by 5 o'clock next Monday. So we'll have an answer soon. But let's go straight to our great panelists for any questions that you may have from your neck of the woods.
Matt, you referred to, and we heard from the expert on the witness stand there. Was that a private investigator?
He is a researcher, is what he describes himself. Basically, he filed a bunch of FOIA requests, Freedom of Information Act requests, to get public records about where Mr. Fishback really lives. And he says he does this for a living. He was actually paid, I believe he said, roughly $50,000 from the Collins campaign. That's not just for this case, but in general to do research. And so he is I believe he said he's been doing this for about 20 years. He's a seasoned researcher, but he didn't follow Mr. Fishback around or do any of that private eye work that sometimes I think about.
And I know you're saying that the
sorry guys, go ahead.
Yeah, I know that this is the Collins campaign who has really brought issue with this. Why are they so concerned when some of the other candidates don't seem to be as engaged with this?
That's a good question. I haven't heard them address that head on. I do know that, look, just looking, let's pick on the prediction polls, the prediction markets, I should say, just for a minute. They would sometimes indicate that Collins is vying for second place with Fishback, that sometimes they're oscillating back and forth depending on the poll, depending on the market. And so that could be it. They could be hoping to siphon some of that vote away. There's some conspiratorial takes that maybe Collins will end up working with one of the other candidates in the end. I haven't seen evidence of anything remotely like that. They did say basically in opening, it's an opening statement. It's not a trial, it's a hearing. But in the opening remarks, they just said that they really believe in election integrity and that they believe it's important to uphold the Constitution. So it also could be a principled approach.
Yeah, I was wondering if this race was really close and how this was brought up. Did someone know that he had cast his ballot, in the other state? And then also, have you really ever heard of anyone being allowed to do this? I thought you always had to vote, there are strict guidelines. So it's kind of surprising to hear this happened.
Yeah, in terms of how they found out, I don't believe they actually disclosed how they found out precisely. The evidence is based on, and as he admitted to, the actual voter registration in D.C. In terms of is it close, if you look at the prediction markets, the answer is no. The prediction markets would tell you that Byron Donalds has above a 95% chance to be the GOP nominee, and that Mr. Fishback is in distant second place. Of course, those are just that, prediction markets, and the votes haven't come in. In terms of this happening before, excuse me, we asked the Leon County Supervisor of Elections, the election supervisor here in Tallahassee, have these kind of challenges happened before? He said yes, but the thing is, they've never happened this late. Ballots have already gone out and already come back. And so while there have been challenges to residency, usually they don't happen this late in the game, and that creates a lot of problems, because if you've already voted, your vote's cast. You don't get a redo if your candidate is thrown off the ballot.
Matt, do you think that that's a consideration that the judges is taking when in making the decision on this?
I do think so. And, Mr. Fishback mentioned that in his court papers. At last check, when we did that story, there was more than 58,000 votes already returned. And so if you just do the math based on prediction markets, that would mean some votes in that would likely be for Mr. Fishback. And so I do think the judge might wonder, am I going to be the judge that, albeit perhaps legally, disenfranchises a bunch of voters? That's definitely a consideration. Judge Frank mentioned that he plans to rule 5 o'clock Monday, and that he's set in stone on that. He even told the lawyers to, speed it up and get me your proposed orders. So clearly he's really worried about that time factor.
And I know judges here in Leon County are probably more used to than other districts in terms of election challenges and potentially time-sensitive election challenges. But if this ends up being a situation where Fishback is off the ballot, do you get a sense that this could be seen as an asterisk type of election, or that it's tainted in any way, or because it just seems like it's such a big distance in between first and second in terms of the front runner, people will just move on after the primary, and Byron Donalds potentially could be the nominee, and we'll just move forward with that?
My personal opinion in watching all this and covering all this, no, I don't think there'll be an asterisk. I mean, 95% in a prediction market is almost unheard of. I mean, that means they believe, the investors do, that that's a near certainty. And so I don't think there would be an asterisk, though I will say Mr. Fishback has cultivated a lot of younger voters. If you go to his events, many folks who are there to support him are on the younger side. I do wonder, out loud, will they just stay home instead of voting at all? If Mr. Fishback is tossed off and they, we're going to go to the polls on election day, which I'm sure many of them were, well, do they just stay home and not vote for anyone else? I think that is potentially a factor, especially because we know historically speaking, younger voters don't go to the polls as often as older voters.
If you'll allow me, Matt, the only way this seems to make sense to me, this whole process, there's two possibilities. One is that somebody wants to hurt James Fishback, not for this race necessarily, but for his future chances, because this becomes a stain on his record. Or number two, Jay Collins feels like if he can consolidate a little more support, then maybe he has a little more influence with Byron Donalds in securing some position in state government once the election is over, if Donalds becomes governor.
Mr. Fishback has alleged exactly what you just said. Mr. Fishback says that Lieutenant Governor Collins, is really doing this so that he can continue to be the lieutenant governor. So if I could just clean up that thought, Mr. Fishback says the only reason this lawsuit is happening is because Lieutenant Governor Collins would like to stay in that role if we have Governor Byron Donalds. Now, again, they're light on evidence of that. I haven't seen any documentation of that. He could potentially siphon off some of that vote that Mr. Fishback was going to get. He is a military veteran. He serves in a high office right now. He was appointed by Governor DeSantis, and Mr. Fishback often touts the same policies as Governor DeSantis. So I think both of those could definitely be a possibility, and perhaps we would never know except from the mind's eye of the campaign.
An interesting side note, with all of this going on social media, Fishback just announced that he and his wife will be having a baby. So I wonder if that's a little bit of a distraction from what's going on.
Wow.
It very well could be. And, obviously family off and off limits, but he has posted about it, to your point, Jessica. And his marriage, it was fairly hasty. It was not a years-long engagement or anything like that. I believe it was a matter of months. And so that definitely could be a distraction. I will say that his wife was there in court. It looked like she was prepared to testify because she wasn't sitting in the courtroom. She was sitting out on the benches where the witnesses sit. And actually, she wasn't called as a witness in the end. And that definitely could be a factor.
Being in court 9 months pregnant can't be very fun.
No.
At all.
No, it
Don't
certainly
imagine.
can't. It certainly can't. All right, let's go ahead and take. Oh, go ahead.
Matt,
I'm sorry.
before you do that, I was just curious, any comment from the Democratic candidates for governor, or are they just happy to let all this play out on the other side with no comment?
No, I have seen comments. In fact, I saw David Jolly, former Representative David Jolly, who is now largely considered the front runner on the Democratic side. I saw he was retweeting or reposting, I guess now, post from Jay Collins's what they call the war room. He was actually reposting another campaign's post. And so they're definitely paying attention to this. And I suspect Democrats think to themselves, we're happy to let this circus go on. We'll try to keep our own house in order, and we're happy to see chaos on the other side. I also saw State Senator Nixon was in court for her own trespassing battles. She took a shot at the same time, saying, there's other court cases going on that are more important than her. So they're definitely paying attention. And I think right now they're mostly happy to stay out of the way and throw lobs where they can. All right, let's go ahead and take our first break, and we'll be back right after this. Thanks for sticking with us. Let's switch from news in the political world to news that could benefit anyone who wants to do any kind of shopping in Florida. To the Florida Retail Federation, 60% of folks are already shopping for back to school. And until August 20th, school products like backpacks, clothes, and puzzles won't be charged sales tax, and neither will most computers or their accessories.
Students these days are sometimes required to have computers or smart books. And so with this sales tax holiday, students, families, anyone can save on the purchase of eligible items all month long from July 20th through August 20th.
Representative Allison Tant is organizing another school supply drive for Jefferson County. She says she prefers the new holiday schedule, which allows parents to get the tax break right before the next school year.
All that stuff has gotten more expensive, not to mention homeowners insurance. So it's nice to have a break, and this is one thing that the legislature's made permanent. So I'm grateful for it.
Now, there are some caps. Puzzles must be less than $30, clothes less than $100. But computers are also part of the holiday. So anyone who buys a PC for less than $1,500 also won't pay sales tax. And that's happening right now. And I know a lot of stores all across Florida are having some big sales because pennies, we can add them up. $1,500 for a laptop, certainly nothing to shake a stick at. Any questions on the sales tax holiday?
I think we're all just very excited to take advantage of it. And I don't know if this says something about me or not, but the other day, as soon as the sales tax holiday started, one of the associates at a store that I frequent quite often, she goes, "Hey, just letting you know, we also have some additional sales."
Yeah. Yeah, in that boutique, that kids boutique that was so kind to let us film in their shop and go live there, they purposely made a huge weekend sale around this. It wasn't just like, this is happening, let's kind of be passengers in this. They had something like 70 bins of new kids, or this is a resale shop, 70 bins of gently used goods coming in for this sale. So, I mean, this is something they were taking extreme advantage of.
And Matt, can you remind me exactly the shift in the tax break timeline? I know you mentioned that the change was for the better according to the businesses. This moved it farther, it lasts longer ahead of the school year, or it was later, closer to the school year previously?
I believe it was 2 weeks in the past. Now we've got a full month, and now of course we're doing it right in the run up to the school season. Yeah, Representative Tant mentioned that at one time it was in January, and then that's not exactly the school time, and this is when 60%, they said in the story, of shoppers are thinking about back to school. Plus, one other note on that, they've made it permanent now. So before, the legislature would have to pass, every year, are we going to do this holiday? Now it's a permanent thing, and so they won't need to have any more legislation. We'll see this again next year and the year after that.
Matt, the state's going to be losing once again a couple $100 million in sales tax revenue. But is there any meaningful opposition to continuing this?
If there is, I certainly haven't seen it. I think it's because it's so great for the consumer, who's of course the voter, and so I haven't seen any huge opposition. Certainly nothing like we've seen on property tax. To use a different tax example, we have seen opposition from cities and counties. I haven't seen anything here, and of course Representative Tant, who we spoke with, and that story is a Democrat in the minority party, and she was supportive.
Yeah, it's a great program. Parents appreciate it, and it's great for the businesses too, because it's generally a slower time, I know, in our area when the snowbirds go back. So that's a win. And did you hear, I know it's been passed year after year, but will it remain this long every time too? Because it used to only be a week. So will it be several weeks like this moving forward?
That's my understanding, that it will be a month going forward. The Department of Revenue, they have a great webpage on this that they lay out, everything, the timing, what's covered, what's not. It's actually just like a one-page graphic. It's great. So if I'm mistaken and it's not a month, check their site. They have so much information on there that it blew me away. And they have the cap, and they have all kinds of, they list out product by product what is covered. And so if I'm mistaken there, they know better than me.
One other group that's really benefiting from this that we kind of forget is the teachers, because they're actually responsible for a lot of their own supplies, and I've got teachers in my family who are taking advantage of the sales tax holiday as well.
Yeah, and that's something that Representative Tant spoke about. She does a big drive every year for Jefferson County, but she said she knows many teachers who we're going out this weekend to go out and get the pencils, the pens, the crayons, the dry erase board markers, all this stuff. And that's a great point. They really do benefit, and how much you save depends on your municipality and your county. But for here in Tallahassee, I mean, 7 cents on every dollar. I mean, that's a lot of money, especially to teachers who we know are, underpaid.
And I think extending it to that month time frame is very helpful, because I know sometimes once your child does start back to school, there are additional things that the teachers request once you get in that classroom. And so having that little cushion time helps as well.
Yeah, I think it's the timing is great. I'm from Minnesota originally. Minnesota, you don't start school even until after Labor Day, and it creates weird situations like that where your shopping's done, but maybe there's something else on the list. Maybe the teacher says, well, really, we need a bunch of Kleenex, or we need a bunch of glue sticks or something like that, and you can't really get it. And I think that's a big plus. This is running, like you said, you get that cushion, and you can still, if you don't get everything you need on the first pass, you can still go back out. You don't have to count receipts. You don't have to count any rebates. It's just show up and buy the stuff, and the sales tax isn't applied.
And real quick, Matt, on the electronics side of things, for folks that just want to maybe cut down the cost on buying a new laptop. I know laptops under $1,500.
Right.
Are other electronics covered under this too, or is it just laptops, PCs?
Yes, the accessories to go with the laptop I know is on the list. The mouse, keyboard. There's, I believe, even battery banks are on there. I would again refer folks to that Department of Revenue site. I don't think cell phones are included. I think that was one of the exceptions, but I could be mistaken about that. But seriously, they have a huge list of like product by product of what you get. And yeah, up to $1,500, I believe you have to certify or tell them that, this is for personal use, not for a business or something like that. But, this is a great chance for anyone. I mean, look how we're doing this show. We all need our laptops. We all need our accessories. And so this is kind of the perfect time to buy right now.
You're right. I might come back next week with a brand new laptop.
Me too. And I look a lot more beautiful if I did. So we'll have to check that out.
You couldn't look any more beautiful.
Thanks. All right. Without any objection, that was this week's Florida Politics Now. Thank you so much for joining us, and we'll catch you next time.